The middle part of 2021 for AAA gaming was like if I was crawling through the desert dying of thirst. Once Resident Evil 8 came out, until like Psychonauts 2 dropped around that time, AAA gaming, man, there was nothing, bro. And before Resident Evil even, usually February is a big month for games, and not this year. It was like Resident Evil, take it or leave it, for like 5 months. But Arcane Studios had a game coming out in September, which was kind of the first of the usual big fall season, and that game was Deathloop. So now let's go back to the desert scenario. Let's say you're crawling through the desert and then you see a guy, he's a trader, well-known trader on a camel. He passes you and he's like, hey, there's an oasis not far from here. It's gigantic. It'll have everything you ever need to stay alive. And he's like, I just seen it across the way. It was just there. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. And then you get there. The oasis is there, but it's much less than what he described. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still an oasis. It still saves your life. But like Deathloop, it is not all that it was hyped up to be by these game critics. But as I said, it's still an oasis. It's not to say that the game is bad. I actually enjoyed my time quite a bit with it. But at its core, Deathloop is an unfinished video game. What's here is fantastic, but it feels like there are parts missing, weapons missing, mechanics, ideas just not there. But we'll get to all that. Let's dive headfirst into Deathloop. Instantly, Deathloop hits you with this incredible setting that Arcane has created. They throw you in a futuristic 1960s on an island that can only be described as rated R Pixar, full of government secrets to find. Not to mention, this game starts with a bang. The first thing you see is you dying. The game kills you before you even get a chance to play. That sounds like some shit this motherfucker would think of. And right after this, you wake up on a beach realizing you're in a time loop. And I have to say, Colt's voice actor is killing it. He is by far the standout here. And to be honest, he's really the only character I thought was interesting. Well, he's really only one of two characters. If you think about it, Juliana's the other one. And I didn't find her that interesting. Her motives didn't make any sense. And the twist that you think is coming with her character is exactly what's gonna happen. But to sum it up, she wants to hunt Colt down and keep killing him to keep the loop from breaking. And in order to break the loop, he has to kill 8 different targets on the island. The problem is, besides like lore pickups, we don't have really any interactions with these targets. We don't know a whole lot about them. So it's a lot less interesting to go around killing these people than it was in a game, let's say, Dishonored, where you meet some of your targets in the beginning of the game when they betray you. And even in a game like that, it doesn't matter as much because you kill the target once and you're done with it. You kill these people over and over and over again. And each time you kill them, you're kind of just like, I don't know anything about you besides the fact that you're probably an asshole. You sound like an asshole. Which sucks because I think the premise here, the actual mystery is really engaging. I love learning more about the island and what it was and who Colt was in the past and why he's here now. And just trying to put all the pieces together on what the hell is going on. And this made exploring the 4 main different areas so fun. Arcane knows how to create these fantastic, linear yet open spaces full of different lore discoveries and different secrets to find. And this is even more accentuated in this game because there's no map of each island. You have to memorize where things are, different paths, the best paths to each target. You also need to keep track of, with a little help from the game, who is where when, what is where when, what loot pickups you can get at certain times during the day in each different area. And kind of scheduling out when you're going to go to each zone in order to do what now and what the next loop was really engaging to me. It really felt like I was solving a mystery. When I first started the game, I thought it was going to be on like a timer, but instead you pick a zone to go to during 4 different times of the day, and there's no timer while you're in these zones, so you can explore them for as long as possible, but once you leave, time goes forward. And I have to say, I love this idea by the developers. Don't rush the player into exploring these, let them take their time. But as you can see, eventually, there's only so much that can be different in each time of the day for each map, so it does get pretty repetitive by the end, but I will say the game does not overstay its welcome, and by the time you finish it, you're like, okay, I've had enough Deathloop. However, the main problem with the time loop mechanic in this game is that there's only one way to kill all 8 targets, and a company that's all about choosing your playstyle, choosing how you want to approach problems, that's so stupid in my opinion. And it sucks that this final solution is so linear when the gameplay is such a fantastic playground to work with. Cue the music, you fucks! we out here kicking ass and shaking ass to freeform jazz. Now watching this gameplay, you're probably like, it looks like Dishonored with guns. And you would be mostly correct, but that's not a bad thing. Dishonored, great video game. Guns in video games, for the most part, usually, most of the time, pretty fun. And the gunplay here is no exception. Playing even on a PS5, on a filthy controller like a console peasant, the feedback was fantastic. Killing these drug-induced, drug-addicted bozos would make Kamala Harris shed a tear, bro. It's just a little too bad that the enemy variety here is a bit lacking. You just have basic enemies who either have a melee weapon or a shooting weapon, also known as a gun, now that I think about it. And the only other variant is a suicide bomber enemy that poses pretty much zero threat. I didn't mind it as much because the game isn't that long. Obviously some more enemy variety would have been fantastic, great even. But I see the enemies in this game more as like your action figures that you're playing with in your sandbox. You do what you want with them. They are your playthings. They are here for you to experiment. And sometimes they act like a fucking action figure because the AI is kind of inconsistent. If you're stealthing around, they can actually spot you pretty easily. And when they're in large groups, especially since they have fucking aimbot, they can beat yo ass. But on the easy-ass normal difficulty, this was only a problem in the party section where there's about 3 million enemies. More enemies in this section than the entire rest of the game combined. And when you do get spotted, sometimes they just funnel through doors and hatches and just run into your gun. And other times they actually kind of space out and try to fight you like decent normal people. Now the alarm system is kind of dumb in this game. It takes a page out of the Cyberpunk 2077 book, where as soon as the alarm is sounded, enemies just spawn out of thin air up your ass. I got flashbacks to fucking Star Wars Bounty Hunter. That's not a game I want to relive. And I know it sounds like I'm ragging on it a lot, but I'm just getting the negatives out of the way first because the gameplay, as I said, is so fantastic. There's so much variety in what you can do. It's a shame that there's a very little weapon variety here though. It tries to make up for this by making different weapon variants, like different colors. So you got blue, you got purple, but they look mostly the same. They act mostly the same, except sometimes they have a little perk associated with it. If I wanted purple weapons, blue weapons, I'd go play Destiny 2 and shoot myself, bro. But I think this is partially made up for with the legendary weapons here. There's not a lot, but there's one for each ammo type. And some of them even work as 2 weapons in one, so it really makes up for that lack of weapon variety. So get some of these as soon as you can, I would say, and you'll have a much better experience. Now with these weapons, the game uses a loadout system where you can only choose a finite amount of weapons to bring, powers to bring, and trinkets to bring, which is kind of a new system. It kind of acts like bone charms. These also have rarity, and they drop like everywhere, bro. This is like I'm playing fucking God of War Ragnarok with all the loot pickups that fall on the ground after killing people. But I like this system. It adds to build variety, and I always like variety in my games. I've said it in probably half of my fucking videos. And letting me choose what kind of cult I want to build is the right way to do this. Now I mentioned them already, but the shining star here, the best part of the gameplay, are the powers. And it's because you can't use all of them at once. Let me explain. You can only bring in 2 of the powers with you, and 2 upgrades for each of those powers to each area. Now personally, I would have upped this limit to 3. But speaking from a gameplay perspective, I think this is genius, because you might think, oh, they're restricting the player, but I think they are making you choose your playstyle instead of just having everything with you at once, and it really makes you think of what you need for each engagement once you memorize these areas. For example, if you want to stealth through the party section, you might take the invisibility with maybe the Nexus power that links enemies together, and whatever happens to one happens to the other. But if you want to go in guns blazing, then maybe you take the Havoc ability with the Gravity Carnesis ability where you just throw motherfuckers around. All the powers are useful, they're all interesting, they can all synergize well together. You just gotta learn by playing, and that's why it's fantastic. Now one of the most unique things about this game is that you can be invaded by Juliana during any one of your runs, and you can choose if you wanted to be a random player, one of your friends, or an AI. Now I opted for the AI, I wanted the full single player experience, and the AI Juliana is a fucking pushover. She's slightly more dangerous than a normal enemy because she has different powers that you have, but for the most part, I don't think I ever died to her. She's not that dangerous, she's more just annoying because you have to hack this jammer that prevents you from leaving the level. It was more just annoying because I had to stop everything I was doing to fight her. And she talked hella shit throughout the whole game, talking about I'm gonna kill you over and over again like I've been doing. And I'm like, you're not very good at it. I don't know how Colt hasn't broken the loop yet because you suck at your job. But I can see if you opt for another player how this can actually be a fun challenge that can interrupt your runs in kind of a cool like 1v1 kind of sense. But I don't have any experience with that, so I cannot speak on the online play, unfortunately. But it's such like a small part of the experience in my eyes that if you do want to play with the AI, you're not missing out on much, I don't think. It's just a shame that with the lack of enemy and weapon variety, as well as a few other things, it just feels a little bit unfinished. but still, it's like the best early access game you ever played. Now, the main reason I think this game is unfinished and easily the worst part are the endings. You have all this fantastic build-up, this great mystery, but great build-up and great mystery doesn't mean dick if the payoff sucks. And in the case of Deathloop, I wouldn't say it sucks. How would I describe it? This is how I would describe it. Let's say you're watching a video game review made by a handsome reviewer, and you're waiting until the end because obviously you're going to have to hear a review score and the final thoughts on the game. And Deathloop is like, I've had this build up, I described the things I like, the things I don't like, and then I end the video right here.